Coming up, the Brooklyn Nets continue to roll down the back end of their season. What does it all mean from a losses standpoint as we try to shake out where they will stack up? We dive in coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is the Locked On Nets podcast, radio on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmbeck. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all these great platforms. I'll let you know that we are talking about where the Brooklyn Nets could potentially be. When we talk about the stretch of this season, some interesting stuff around the league, too, when it comes to injuries in the East as well, Doug. But it's almost done. This is almost over. The season stretch, getting to the point where we can talk about where the Nets land in the lottery and what it's going to mean for them for next season.
Yeah, 10 games left to go this year in the season. Probably their most critical stretch of the whole bunch here. And somehow the other night lost ground in the lottery standings because Philadelphia, who's become an absolute travesty. Let me just, for 2 seconds about Philadelphia here before we talk about the Nets. The Sixers, the Sixers, without Joel Embiid, okay, fine. Without Paul George, okay, fine. Without Tyrese Maxey, okay, well, that one seems like maybe a closer call than some want to admit, but okay, fine. Then they somehow, the Sixers, pull off this trade with the Mavs, who have had the season, it's the worst season in basketball history. It's probably the worst season in sports history. They've had the worst season in sports history. They pull this trade off. They get Quentin Grimes. This guy becomes like the second coming of Michael Jordan in terms of efficiency and overall volume. And they're like, well, never mind. You sit down too. Like you're too good now. You have a seat. And they sit him the other night against, I believe, with the Mavericks, and they end up losing again and are now ahead of the Nets in terms of the overall Tankathon odds, thanks to the Nick Claxton buzzer beater from a few weeks ago, where they pulled that game out, and it was exciting to watch it, but he realized now it's a terrible win. So this whole thing, I mean, the Philadelphia thing is just like a next level kind of complete and utter troll job on the Nets, who have tried to feather the line, to use your word, between sort of virtue ethics and lottery odds.
Yeah.
And the Sixers are like, nah, we're just gonna take a dump. We'll just poop here on the middle of the court here. Like that's fine. That's fine by us. If it gets us a better lottery odds, like we can just drop Trow and leave one right here at center court.
Well, I mean, it's insane, too, to use like Philadelphia, because we know, as many fans will point back to, what the Nets should have done and going 9-10 to start the season. Now, I think if you had stacked up this year in any number of different ways, if it wasn't 9-10 to start the year, I think everybody would talk about the Nets differently, because we're sitting here now and they're a 23-win team, right? And maybe they're going to get to 25 wins by the time the season's over. Hopefully only 23 wins. Like, that's the dream. But if it comprised differently, you feel differently about it. Philadelphia, to your point, like a month and a half ago, we were talking about like, well, Philly, they're dealing with some injuries, but it looks like they still got a chance here. Now there's a top 6 protected. The level of nosedive that it takes, as we talked about other teams that have been best in lottery odds and ugliest in terms of providing their fan base with anything to be excited about. Philadelphia turned this ship, or plane, whatever it might be, directly nose down and plummeted as hard and fast as they could. And I'm sure there's a segment of the Nets fan base that looks at it and goes, well, now come on now. You see, look at how these teams can do it. Nobody can stop a tank if you really want a tank. And now the Nets are at the battle for 10 straight games. I use battle in the loosest and worst sense of the word, to try to stay above them for that 5th spot. And like, there's a significant difference there if we talk about those percentages. Like, I've tried to push back on the idea of, yes, 52 versus 39. It's less, but it's not horrific. But 31.9% is a significant drop off from where you think you could have been, right at the top of the heap, 52.1% chance for top 4 and all that stuff. If you're down at 31, it's going to feel a lot different for the Brooklyn Nets, at least for a fan base, until the ping pong balls settle.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I will say between 5th and 6th, there's like not an overwhelming difference when it comes to odds around the top 4. It's like where it's where it stretches out into the back end, where there's like a much better chance of like the 8th pick, let's say, right? Like, and so it's not where you want to be. Like, their odds for the top 4 won't change. They'll still be right in that, like, right around 50% range to land in the top 4. But it's where it like gets like markedly worse, like on the tail end of the outcomes, where it's like, okay, well, they could be worse. And really what they want to do, what the big jumps are between when it comes to like drafting near the top, the big jumps happen at number 4 in the lottery. Like the Nets would love to get to number 4. They're not gonna get there. I don't think, like with the Pelicans. I mean, it might be sneaky interesting down the stretch here. Pelicans are 20-53, but 4 in the loss column over the last 10 games is like not going to be probably possible, because really
anytime
4 is where you want
win, though. Anytime any team wins near there, you go, whoa, that opens the door.
And really, yeah, you're right. Really thinking about it, like 4 should have been the absolute must-have for where they got to here, right? Like to finish outside the top 4 for them, after trading everything away, after getting the pick from the somehow getting the pick back from the Rockets, which feel totally impossible, without even setting a player. Like, and I know that the Suns thing is going to rear its ugly head later, but to do that, the organizational edict should have been top 4 here.
Yeah. And,
vibes and culture are worth something, but we can kind of have a little bit of it, but let's make sure we don't win. Right. And so I think like that the Nets are going to probably feel the pain. Now, the funny thing about this is, and it's from a fan perspective, I've seen this all season long. The funny thing about it is, it's not like you'll ever know what could have happened had they lost more games, right? Because this has
always been in the back of my brain. This is always the thing. It's always the presumption that had they lost the most games in the league, they would have gotten the number 1 pick. We know that's not.
So it's like different than the NFL, where it's like, well, if Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock don't just somehow, take PEDs and win these games or whatever they did to like somehow like, to make a deal with the devil and win these games. And there's like, well, it could have been Drake May or it could have been Jaden Daniels. And you can just see the guy because you just know, like, it's not a lottery system. The NBA is a little different, where even if the Nets, what anti-tankers will always point to, it's so annoying, but what they'll always point to is, well, you don't know. Well, yeah, no crap. I get we don't know, but like, the idea is that it's still the chances would have been better. So that's what they'll always point to. It's like, well, you don't know. Because what they'll probably do, this is the worst thing that can happen. I'm going forever on this, but the worst thing that can happen is right now, I'll tell you what, this is what's going to happen. Washington, has the best odds, right? Let's say Washington has the best odds. If they don't get the number 1 pick, all we'll hear forever is, see? that's going to be it. That's the whole story. They'll just say, see? Like, you don't know. Like, and so that's going to be the forever story we're going to hear on this. So that's the problem. That's the problem with not having a fixed system, is that you do never know, and still the odds make it better. But none of these teams care. Like, these teams are unabashedly tanking anyway.
I'll come back in here in a moment and tell you why. Maybe I'll be one of the people that says, see? And also looking at the schedules with some of these opponents as we wind the season down, can they sneak up 1 more spot? Can they lock in 5? We'll do that here, or maybe even 4. In just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, tell you about our friends over Gametime. Nothing like watching basketball live. You get the energy of the crowd, sound of the sneakers on the hardwood. Maybe you get a celebrity sighting courtside. We get that with the Nets every once in a while. If you want to catch a game in person, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. They got the new feature, Gametime Picks. It's going to filter out the fluff, showing you only the best deals and great seats. You don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. You got easy ticket shopping. If you go over to Gametime right now, you got Raptors at Nets. Oh boy, Raptors at Nets starting at $11 coming up here. There's still time. You're going to hear this episode. Go over to Gametime. $11 with Raptors at Nets. Going out a little further. Clippers at Nets, $35. Wolves at Nets starting at $29. You're not going to find, Pelicans at Nets, $12. Little plan that one out. It's a week from now. Go do that. $12 for a basketball game. Just some of what you're going to get over at our friends on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app today. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the end of the season. It's almost over, the merciful time of year when we all think, what could we have done better? How could we have been worse? Or what could we have done less better? Bottom line is, we look at the Pelicans, the one thing, so the Pelicans, you mentioned that before, just like in the next 5 games, we're talking about, hey, what could you watch for? All these teams are trying to lose games. So it's not like you can look at it and just say, well, you're playing XYZ, good team, bad team, win, loss. But the Nets play Toronto, LA, Washington, Dallas, Minnesota. And inexplicably, go watch Nick Angstad on Locked On Mavs. he's confused as to how the Mavs are winning games or why they're winning games and what their plans are here at 35 and 38. But when you look at the Nets, like outside of the Washington game, you'd say losses across the board. Nothing can stop us from losing. In the case of the Pelicans and like the Philadelphia 76ers as well, like the Pelicans are going to lose 3 out of their next 5 no matter what. It's Golden State, Charlotte, Clippers, Lakers, Bucks. Now, Bucks have their own situation going on because Dame Lillard's going to be out for an undetermined amount of time with the blood clot.
He's out for the season.
So, like, that changes. Was that?
Yeah, he's out for the season. He's not going to.
Indefinite. Yeah, as in he's not going to be back. So, and now listen, you still have Giannis, so that's going to change things a little bit. But the point there being, it's like even if we talk about sometimes, you accidentally walk into a win. It's going to be really hard in the final 10 games to walk into wins against teams that need the wins. So Hornets, yeah, maybe the Pelicans end up picking up a W there. Outside of that, it's about the 5th spot. It's about maybe trying to find a way to secure it over top of Philadelphia, who has Washington, Miami, Toronto, and then the Knicks and the Bucks. So in these next 5 games, like you're going to see some things shake out here. It comes back to the same theme every time. Like, this is brutal because we're talking about a handful of teams being like, how do we try to make sure that we're bad enough? Who are the Nets going to sit down? And in the case of the Nets, so there's 2 things. One, I'd like to be the guy that goes, if Washington doesn't get the number 1 seed, say, this is why you play it out. This is why you just play the season out and you hope for the best. In the Nets situation, they are one of the only teams who had the outlook at the start of the year be thrown off not by players that they brought in or things that changed dramatically, just by effort and hustle and coaching. This team changed the trajectory. Any other team that's in that lottery conversation now through injuries made different choices. Philadelphia being chief among them, right? Washington, Utah, Charlotte, they were already going to be bad this year. The Pelicans had their own injuries. They made choices about it. I think that's really why the fan base gets frustrated by it. The Nets are the only team that went the other way against the grain of what your perception was coming into the year. And then now we still find ourselves here thinking, okay, top 4, by the way, as you mentioned, that would have been the play. Top 4 would have been, I think, fine for most of the fan base, regardless of final record and everything else. It's getting that 5th spot and losing 10% of your odds that really hits you hard.
Yeah, and like you want to say, like we talked about this so many times over the course of the season, like the playing hard to start matters and setting a tone for players matters, and player development can only really happen if there's like a structure and system. And if you have a structure and system, you're going to, maybe win some games. And if if you have full effort every game, like you do have a chance to win. If you have full effort and a repeatable system, like sort of personnel independent system, plus just like maybe some luck here and there, like, yeah, you are going to probably scratch out some games. These other teams, like, and they've had like decent consistency in terms of players. Like, I know people are like, well, Cam Thomas has got hurt. Like, every team has dealt with injuries. Like every team, like, and some that have been like, are just at the very top of the standings. Like Cleveland's been remarkably healthy this year. Okay. They're at the top of the standings. Boston's been healthy this year. They strategically sit their guys, but they just win anyway, right? And so like these teams that haven't dealt with crazy, OKC's had like no injuries. I mean, Chet was hurt for a little bit, but for the most part, I guess Jalen has been hurt, but still, I mean, like they've been pretty consistent and they have really great talent too. Teams that have been consistently healthy are pretty much at the top. There's some outliers in there like Memphis or whatever, but overall the Nets, haven't dealt with crazy injury stuff. Cam Johnson's played most of the season when healthy. You get what I mean. So, like, in the end, though, where they stand, like, that stuff kind of counts for a lot with some of these teams. Like, so maybe that counts for more than we think, honestly. Like, maybe it just counts for more, like, playing hard, having a system, having a good coach counts for way more than anyone ever thought. I think if truth serum time, they went into the season be like, we can play our hardest. It ain't going to matter. Like right. I almost guarantee
that is my point. Yes, they didn't anticipate that with good coaching and giving a maximum effort that it was actually going to move the needle. And then
I think there's no way. No, I think there's no way. I think like any analytics department would look at this situation and be like, they just don't have it. Like we could play our hardest, we could play balls out every single night. We just don't have the horses. Like there's no way. And then it turned out that they somehow kind of did. And I think that was probably the biggest surprise of anything. I don't think strategically tank, sit everybody. I mean, look who they've played this year. They haven't, like, it's not like this talent is like overwhelming. Like I would still say they had the least talented roster in the NBA. And
they played the
go
Mavs
ahead.
the other night, and I had Nick Angstad text me, and he was like, he's like, who is Tyrese Martin? And
Exactly.
now I hit on a couple of levels. On the one level, I was like, right, like this is what the Nets are putting out there. But the other level was, you know how much we've talked about Tyrese Martin this year? How could you not know about like from our perspective, it's like whether we understand he's a 25-year-old, G leaguer who's been called up and has had a decent season by all accounts for himself and doesn't really necessarily matter in the cosmic spectrum of NBA basketball. We know about him. He's played a lot of minutes for the Brooklyn Nets.
Right.
But when you step outside the Nets orbit, you have people going, I'm sorry, who you calling up here? Be like, yeah, don't worry about it. We just recalled Tariq Whitehead back from the G League. He's going to get a little run here at the end of the year. And that also kind of crystallizes where your team is when you hear the way other people that cover the NBA are talking about them or asking questions like, hey, what should I know about this guy? I didn't even know he was in the league.
Yeah, they have like one top 50 guy maybe in Cam Johnson. And like, that's it. And so I just think that they went into the season. They're like, there's no way we can win. We can play our hardest. Everyone can. They probably just told Jordan, it's like, play your hardest. They probably didn't care. They probably were like, there's no way. We play your hardest. Great. We want you to. We're still going to lose. Still going to lose. And I just think that like that just didn't happen with I just think that didn't happen with like the overall volume that they thought it would. And look, you can get a little lucky. Their RPI thing, I think their RPI has them somewhere around. Well, it's probably gotten a little thrown off lately because these other teams have been so terrible. Yeah, their RPI has been fifth. I mean, it's like right in the range of sort of like where they should be. Philadelphia should be a little higher. I will say the total joke of it. This is the joke of it, and I actually understand why fans would get really mad about this. And this is why the system is silly with like the strategic tanking. Any fan looking at this and saying, oh, the team with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey gets to lose as many because they just have no shame. Like the team with Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, Colin Sexton, Keontae George, and Walker Kessler gets to lose way more than the Nets because they have no shame. The team with Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and now Brandon Ingram's hurt gets to be in the range because they have no shame, right? Like, the team with LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Mark Williams, right? Like, that team gets to be way worse. The team with Zion Williamson gets to be so much worse. Like, this is the part where the Nets fans have a legitimate gripe. It's like all these other teams have these kind of like tentpole guys that you can kind of point to and be like, okay, like, I hate to say not fair because I freaking hate when people say that about anything in life. Like, oh, it's not fair. It's like one of the most beta things you can say in life. I will say, this is the part. This is a legit.
Having said
this is a legit.
I will say.
Well, you just heard me list the names. You just heard me list the names. All these teams with these guys that like are just way better, but because of. And by the way, all those guys I mentioned have like not really been injured this year, except for like the Philly guys right here at the end. Like most of those guys that I mentioned have been like pretty healthy, and I can see where a Nets fan just ring. Go ahead.
Brooklyn pays the price for having a great coach. Like it's like, and in the end, knowing you have a great coach ends up spiking something for you. Where these other teams, to your point, competitiveness, just being able to have players that that are recognized by the league, that have been top picks in years past, and yet still find yourself in the circumstances that they are, is somewhat of a brutal beat. Not unfair, a little too beta for us here on the Locked On Nets podcast, but it smells. If it smells like a fish and it looks like a fish, it's probably a fish. We'll come back here in a second, though. Want to talk about the last 11 games. Something critical can happen here for Brooklyn. Maybe that fourth spot is achievable. Plus, Doug has thoughts on the Raptors. We'll see what that's about here coming up in just one moment. All right. As we continue to wrap up today's Locked On Nets episode, there's a few things here. One, when you look at the last 11 games, starting with the Denver Nuggets here on Wednesday for the Milwaukee Bucks. I know you thought I was talking about the Nets, but look, the Milwaukee Bucks have 11 games remaining, and without any Dame Lillard, they're going to be playing competitive basketball. We get that. The hard part for Brooklyn is 2 times Milwaukee will see the Pelicans before the season is over. And in that stretch, depending on what happens, what I find fascinating is thinking about the draft and thinking about where the Nets stand. Milwaukee is 19th right now. The Nets will get that pick. But when you go and look at the standings, Milwaukee can shift pretty quickly here at 40 and 31. The Pistons are right there at 41 and 32. You don't have to worry about anybody else in the East per se, but where they finish and then what their playoff outlook is, the Nets could actually end up spiking like a slightly higher pick there than maybe we thought a month ago. And that is important because I know as we should focus so much on that first pick. Where is it going to land? Okay, let's say that it is 6th. Like, let's just say it's right where it is right now, 6th pick overall. Well, there's a big difference if you're sitting there at 17th versus 23rd when you come up on the board again. And I will talk about as we get towards the draft, do you combine 2 of these picks later in the first round to move up the board? So what's going on with Milwaukee and Dame and that injury and what the rest of their season and then playoffs look like actually is pretty significant for Brooklyn in my mind, especially if you talk about a deep class and just positioning yourself the best to fill out your roster early in the draft.
Yeah, it'd be nice to move that up because it's such a deep draft. And like the other ones that they have in this first round, like the Rockets and the Knicks, like those teams have been so good record-wise that like those are just falling kind of all the way at the bottom as it stands right now. So like to move one of these up would be nice with the Bucks, who are another kind of like their own problem set. But like, no, yeah, I think that this would be a year, rooting for other teams' demise is always a tricky spot, but just from sort of the, the karma standpoint. But the Bucks one kind of makes sense. It's going to be hard for them. I mean, the real dream would have been them losing all these games, but I don't think they can fall too far at this point. Like the Hawks, where the Hawks are
17 really, because Minnesota's 41-32. And then and then 16 and 15 right now is 35 win teams, Orlando and Atlanta. So they're not, we don't think they do. I don't think they're going to fall there. Right. So 17 is like your,
I think they're at the bottom of this tier right here. Like, I don't think they can go further. They really can't go further down, short of just like really just not, I mean, Giannis, this foot sprain keeps him out and they just lose everything. I mean, like maybe, but even then I think it'd actually be pretty tough. But overall, I think that's where they're going to stand. But having a pick like that, having a pick in that spot in this draft is meaningful. Moving up in this draft, I think, will be tough. It will be funny. I think one thing will be interesting. Not funny. One thing that'll be interesting is I do think that because this draft is so deep, I think we're going to see some team boards just not follow chalk here. Like because this is a deep draft and there's a lot of talent, I think we're going to see some different teams are going to value players differently. And that's going to lead to, my guess, like a lot of movement in this tier of players because there's just too much talent. You're gonna internally evaluate this stuff different. I think obviously at the top it's probably pretty chalky right now with Flag and then Harper and Bailey and like that being the top 3. I think that's probably set. That could change though. I'm not sure about Bailey. I could see that changing. But in this after that range, I think it could swing kind of wildly where these teams evaluate these guys. Like I could see for instance, Trey Johnson's a good example. Like I could see some people liking him at 5th and some people not loving him in the top 10 or something. Right. Yeah. And maybe that's not a perfect example, but every one of these guys is good, but figuring out where they mix and match with each other is not necessarily easy. So I think that's going to be an interesting subplot for the Nets here too.
And it's funny because, we talk about from a Nets perspective, well, is it just best player available? Don't worry about it. Sort it out in the back end. Almost certainly. I think once they make their first pick, wherever it falls, yes, you will think about the 18th pick from the Bucks and where that lands. And the picks in the 20s, right? You're not just going to go, we'll take 4 centers and call it a day. But because that's the way the board breaks. But for other teams, to your point, it's it's a very deep class. And we kind of want to know, the Raptors are a good example. When you look at their roster, you say, well, we have some pieces that we really like here. So the piece we bring in the top 10, we do want them to fit into what we're doing here. Right now, it may impact what we think about some other guys on our roster, but we have a core. The Nets don't, for all intents and purposes, the Nets don't have a core. We have a bunch of players, but there's not a core here that you go, oh, how's it all going to fit together? What's going to look like? Maybe the 4 guys that they draft in the first round of the NBA draft is the core of the team going forward. So that does change a little bit the way other teams would look at the board for sure.
That's a great
there's 2 different things happening, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the draft, Nets versus everybody else in a lot of ways.
I hadn't really thought about that. That's a really great point. That is going to also swing the draft. Because those teams, I hadn't even thought about that at all, but you're exactly right. All those teams that I mentioned, when I listed all the guys that are on their team already, right.
I only got there thanks to your hard work, thanks to your journey. I ended up winning the prize.
Yeah, that's a good connection point because those teams, some of these teams should draft on some fit, right? Maybe not all the fit, but some fit, and outside of fit independent guys Cooper Flag, it's who cares who you have? You're gonna, you're never changing that. And it wouldn't.
We're going with Jeremiah Fears. I feel like the fit's just better. We're gonna, but we're passing Cooper Flag.
Yeah, but it's interesting though. But Yakachunas, maybe that's not a great Toronto fit, probably, right? Yeah. And so based on who they already have, so it's okay, well maybe I'm just kind of off the cuff here, but maybe some of these guys would slip or climb because of who the teams already have. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. Something that almost for sure benefits the Nets, I would say, right? Like, I think that there's almost no situation where that doesn't help them, because if they are fit independent, which they should be, because you're right, they don't have, you said for all intents and purposes, they don't have a core. They don't have a core. You can remove the first part. Like, they don't have a core of players here for sure. And so I think that situation actually does help this team no matter where they land, because someone could draft for fit over talent, and that only helps teams as you go down. So I think that's a good situation for them.
Should probably pay attention here too, because even though we're talking about can they get back ahead of Philadelphia and lock in the 5th spot, 4th looks out of reach with the Pelicans, Toronto is 25-47, so like they're the next team behind them. The Nets play them on Wednesday night, and you got to make sure you secure the losses, right? You got to secure the losses.
Matters. Yeah,
if you lose if you get this loss here against the Raptors, then it does feel like, okay, we're probably done having the looking back conversation, like who's behind us. It's only about Philadelphia and can you catch them. If you were to run into a win here, then all of a sudden, as I say, like, even though you're not going to worry about Miami after that 31-41, because, by the way, I'm sorry, just a quick sidebar here. Miami, who was like, we're losing everything, 10-game losing streak, they turn around and win 2 games. I point these things out sometimes, because when you're inside this fan base or you're covering this team, you go, I can't believe X, I can't believe Y. Look around the league. Best intentions of whatever your plan is, they go awry, because the thing that is not being agreed on is by all the players that go on the court. Don't worry, we love this franchise so much. I know you're going to cut me in the offseason. I'm not going to get a contract here, and I may not play in the league anymore, but I do want to make sure you guys get the best odds in the lottery, right? So it always throws things out of whack. But this game against Toronto is probably like one of the last big ones to really circle here, and the Nets play them again April 6th as well. So we'll have 2 meetings with them. They have 1 more against the Pelicans. They have Washington on the schedule, but unfortunately the head-to-heads with Philadelphia are done. Like, so the battle there is all going to be about who has the worst record by the end. Losing to Toronto, and I'm saying it straightforward, I'm not even caveating. Losing to Toronto is the agenda tonight if you want to make sure that you give yourself the best chance of those odds.
I mean, this might be like one of the most important. This might be the most important night of the final 10 games of the season, because Philadelphia plays Washington. And if there's a game that these losers can win, it's that one. And so, and Washington's been trying a little hard. Like, Washington's been trying a little harder. Quentin Grimes, second coming, of like Kobe Bryant is back playing tonight against the Wizards. So the Sixers winning against the Wizards, and the Nets have to lose this game. I'm gonna tell you right now. Okay. Kudos to us. 72 games into the season, I have not said that one time this whole season. I don't think.
First time we've been like they have.
I have not said. I don't think either of us have uttered some of the words of the Nets have to lose. So I'm just pulling it out right now. 1-72, 1-73 games. We're allowed to say it. The Nets have to lose this game. Like, that's it. Point stop. They just have to lose it. If it means throwing Dariq Whitehead and Reese Beekman out there to close the game, so be it. So be it. Yeah. Like, and you can know, and I mean it, because we have not said it. Yeah, we've said that they should be doing this stuff on a macro level. I don't think we've ever. Have you said it? I don't think even I've said have to lose this. They have to lose tonight. That's it. Like, this is really important. Dropping into that 7th spot is a marked shift in the lottery odds, and you just can't play with. Well, playing with fire is like something good can happen. Well, whatever the opposite of that is.
You can't play with ice cubes if you're not going to put a few down.
But anyway, must loss
here.
Must loss here. And I mean it, because we haven't said it. We're in March 26th, and we've been doing this all year, he says with a sigh. But this is like they just have to lose this game.
With a long contemplative sigh. That is the deal. They'll play the Raptors tonight. We'll see how it shakes out. They do have the Wizards on the schedule coming up as well for themselves, with some other teams mixed in that are going to be wanting to play some winning basketball. But as we know, down the stretch of the season, a lot of times, once those playoff positions are locked in, all of a sudden a team on the schedule that you should lose to becomes a weird, wonky, and then accidental win. So all the way down to the final game of the season, to 82. It's going to be brutal to see whether or not the Nets can pull this off. That's all I got.
What a mess, man! This season, it's so crazy. Kudos to look. If there's an MVP this season,
for us,
Cam Johnson, no, or Jordy Fernandez, no, D'Lo, no, us. Those are the co-MVPs for rocking this all 72. And what's that?
I said 1,000 times.
I blew it by
me over 1,000 times. Yeah. Who? Me. I've fallen in love with myself, and it turns out the person I've been looking for is me.
Support us. It's all about us. Support us by subscribing to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribing to YouTube as well. Didn't get the 8,000 followers, so I blame everybody out there, but you can make up for it right now by going over and subscribing to Locked On Nets over on YouTube.
The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And that is Bobby Frost.
One of the all-time great poets. We're back in tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets.
Basketball.